Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show. As this episode drops on Valentine's Day, I want to send a little love and gratitude to all of you. I hope you can carve out a little self-care time today. Maybe you want to go back and listen to the first minisode that dropped last week. It's a short meditation created especially for the Let's Slow Down community by my friend and guest, Liane McGahee. It's amazing how much better something so simple can make you feel. From my heart to yours, happy Valentine's Day. Welcome, everyone, to the Let's Slow Down podcast. Today, my guest is Tina VanDenburg. I'm so excited to have her here today. She's recently launched a new podcast called In Kinship, a podcast for makers who crave a vibrant life on your own terms. Sounds amazing. Welcome, Tina. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I just heard you speak about my podcast. I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. I should listen to that one.
Yes.
And I'm like, woo! Yeah, very exciting.
I love the word vibrant. I just feel like it's just one of those words that immediately makes, piques your interest. And it's just an exciting word. I feel like it has a really great energy to it. So why don't we start with that? And why don't you give us a little background on what your inspiration was to starting the podcast?
Okay. Ooh, is that a big question? Started the podcast for the same reason that I started my business. So I have a business teaching women how to sew clothing that they love so that they feel empowered and beautiful and vibrant in a way, right? So I believe that we have a lot more control in our lives than we allow ourselves to believe. And I believe that we can live a vibrant life if we intentionally choose certain things in our life. Like, obviously, life is going to deal us with whatever hand it's going to deal us. And we get to decide what we do then and how we experience that hand that we've been dealt. But I think that we often can feel like we're victims to our circumstance. And I certainly have seen in my life different ways in which I can live more vibrantly by choosing things more intentionally and more mindful. And so going back to what I said about my business and how it began is that it began really as a way to empower women, to feel like they're capable. Because I think that before you can understand that you have the ability to shift your life and to live more vibrantly, just in your own head, just with your own tools that you already have on your own body, we have to feel like we're capable. We have to feel like we have the empowerment that we need to do that. And so for me, that has come in my life several different ways in the form of making things. I'm a maker by nature, but anytime I made something like a dress for the body that I have or leggings for the body that I have, things that make me feel amazing because I fit my body well and I did it with my own two hands, I feel this sense of empowerment. I feel this sense of like, I can do anything, right? Because I have just done this magical, mystical thing like made leggings, which obviously are impossible to just make, right?
Yes, that is what I'm thinking right now. How did you do that? Wow.
I actually love to teach making leggings because they're one of the simplest things to make. And I teach people how to draft them to their own body. And everyone's like, can't do this. And then they're like, I just did this, right? And so there's a beauty to that in that sense of like, look at what I'm capable of doing. And I started the podcast because I wanted to broaden my audience. I wanted to broaden the people that I was talking to and the people that I was having conversation with and the people that I could reach beyond just people who sew clothing, because that has been the vein of my business. But really, I'm all about empowering people to feel like they can take more control of their own lives. And so the vibrant aspect comes from there's been so many times in my own life when I'm feeling dull or I'm feeling depressed maybe, or I'm in a lull in my life. And I realize if I stop and I meditate every morning just for 5 minutes, I don't have to do it for an hour. I don't have to be some guru at it. I just have to stop and have a little intentionality to my life, like how much it improves my life. Or if I look at the week that I have coming up and I decide, I know that a walk with a friend or a talk with a friend is going to improve my life a hundredfold. So in this low period of my life, add that into my day, right? And it's going to improve things. So, like, there are so many ways in which I can individually add vibrancy to my life. And I want to share that with a broader audience. And I want to share it with the lens of making because, like I mentioned, I think one, I'm a maker. So it's an easy, like, I love to talk about making things. So why not have that be part of the podcast? But two, I think that we inherently as makers feel like we can do things ourselves, right? I don't know how many makers you've met. If you are a maker, I don't know if you are, but who have walked through a store or through a craft fair or something else and thought, oh, I could make that. If I just bought, $500,000 worth of materials, I could do that sweater, right? Like this sense of like, I can do this. And so I wanted to capitalize on that idea that we already think that we're capable of doing things. So let's broaden that into our lives in an even more intentional way, I guess. Let's broaden how we live day to day, not just our making journey, but beyond that.
And it's those little steps in that journey that lead to that greater outcome, right? And
Yeah.
you asked if I'm a maker, and I'm not. Not for the lack of wanting, I just don't think I have that piece in me. I'm just not. My children are. Actually, all of my kids are super creative, even just the way they draw, everything they do. My one daughter can make a beautiful mural outside out of anything, sticks, leaves, acorns, you name it,
Oh.
rocks. It's amazing. She's got it. She is a maker in that sense. I am a musician. I'm a classically trained clarinetist. So I am a maker in a different way. I'm a maker of
Yes.
music and that type of energy. So I am not, and it is with my hands because I'm using my hands to play
Mhm.
the instrument, but I certainly have that creative piece in me as well.
Yeah.
And I love the energy that it brings to my life
Mhm.
and to the life of others. And that sense of satisfaction, like you said, I made the clothes that I'm wearing right now. I mean, how amazing is that to be able to
Mhm.
say and to feel that sense of accomplishment and purpose and doing something useful. So I get a similar type of energy and satisfaction from my music. And I did gain a deeper appreciation for it after and through the pandemic because, live music didn't really happen. I did find myself like searching Facebook everywhere for any kind of live. There was all these like free concerts and things, and I was
Mhm.
definitely missing that type of feeling and energy. So I was did get to see a lot of those, but once the symphony that I play with, once we were back together and playing, it was so incredible. It was so
Mhm.
incredible, and it was a feeling that I don't get anywhere else. It's so unique
Mhm.
to that space, and it is just an amazing energy that I feel like it adds to my life. So, so much joy. So I feel like being creative in whatever way you are is
Mhm.
so important. And I
Mhm.
think that, talking about my little 8-year-old who builds the fairy things outside and uses her creativity all the time with whatever resources she has. We're so good at doing that as children. And as we get older, it can be
Mhm.
lost sometimes. So
Yes.
I think that it's amazing that you have held on to that and that you're sharing it with others. That must feel really good for you to be able to share that gift with so many people.
Absolutely. Before I answer that though, or before I speak to that rather, I want to mention that as somebody who is not easily inclined, although I do have some like latent dreams of like playing the cello and some kind of rock out music with like some punk clothing on, right? And like singing at the top of my lungs and somehow awe inspiring when I do this. So I have had dreams being a musician in my life. It's never come to fruition, and I don't know that it ever will. I think it's one of those latent dreams that you just like, yeah, someday I'm gonna rock out on the stage. And I'm like, I don't even sing in the shower. What are you talking about? But
Never too late.
right, that's true. But I think that I have such awe for people who make music because I think that you are absolutely a maker and we probably should broaden that out to be a creator, right? Like to create things.
Yeah.
and to put your heart and soul out there is a very essence of creating something. And I think musicians often show us a piece of their soul that is beautiful to behold. And so I just want to thank you for that. Like it's just an amazing
Oh,
thing to me.
you're
And,
welcome. Thank you for
and
saying that.
I have a lot of respect for that. So then you had asked me, or you had said to me, I must feel really good being able to put out the work that I put out into the world as well. And I do. And I think that I love creating and making things for myself. Like I do feel that sense of like I'm capable of doing anything I can put my mind to, right? I have this innate sense that I am. Could I be a rocket scientist? Yeah. If I wanted to put my mind to it and all the time and the years and that, I mean, maybe it's
Yep.
a little late now. I'm 44, but I do have this innate sense that I'm capable. Um, and what I love most though is teaching. I love teaching and I love having, especially somebody that comes in maybe with a sense of perfectionism, or maybe they're in their 70s and they took home ec in high school and the home ec teacher would slap their hands with a ruler, right? Like I've heard insane things.
Right, right.
And I love taking those people that have this, like, I can't do that. I'm not capable, but somehow they showed up in my class anyway, because somewhere they knew they were, right? And they come in my class and I lend them just for the briefest moment of time, a little bit of confidence and walk them through, but really it's them doing all of it. And I love that process that they go through and how at the end they're like, I just did this. And I love how that opens people up and it opens them up to possibilities. And that's what I that's what I adore more than anything about the work that I do.
I think that's the empowerment
Mhm.
message that you were talking about, right? And
Yes.
it goes so far beyond the garment that they just sewed
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
the piece of music that they just played, because it can teach them so many lessons on the broader subject of life and how to approach things and to actually put some hard work in, and that things take time to create and to make, which is
Absolutely.
such a lost art right now, with everything being at the click of a button, having to
Yes.
have that patience and that discipline to persevere and to make the mistakes. You're not going to sew the leggings perfectly the first time. There's going to be one shorter than the other or something.
Right.
And that's part of the process. And gosh, I've played so many wrong notes in my life and I still do, but that's part of it. That is part of the journey.
Yeah.
And I love what you said a few minutes ago about the choices that we have. And that is something that's really resonated with me lately. Just in the last couple of years, I've realized, wow, we forget how much agency we have in our own life. And it's so easy to get caught up in everything going on around us and just the day to day. Forget about the outside world, just the day to day of keeping your house running and the family fed and clothed and all of those basic things, that we
Mhm.
forget sometimes we have the choice to go in one direction or another, and we don't have to keep doing certain things if they're not working anymore. So
Right.
I love what you mentioned about that, and I know in your podcast you talk about living a fully awake life, which I love that phrase so much. It's right there with that's vibrancy, right? That's a
Yeah.
fully awake life. So
Right.
tell us more. I love that.
Well, I think about fully awake in the aspect of kind of its obvious opposite, right? Not being asleep, not walking through life asleep, not walking through life doing what the person in front of you is doing because that's what's supposed to be done. Not walking through life thinking, well, a mother is supposed to give up all of her agency and just be there for her children, not buying into what is presented to you. So, like, at a very basic level, that comes together for me in clothing, right? So, not buying into what's on the rack, what's on the shelf. So, part of my business with teaching women how to sew clothing is the idea that we're learning how to love ourselves and have grace for ourselves, the body that we have, because what's on the rack is never going to fit you. It's always going to be slightly okay or completely wrong, right? One of the
Yep.
two.
Yep.
It's very rarely, if ever, going to fit your body in style, in actual clothing fit, all of that. And I think that taking kind of the world into our own hands, or taking our world into our own hands and saying, all right, well, I want this kind of material on my body. I like natural fibers, for an example. So right now I'm wearing a wool dress. that I absolutely adore and I made and created. And I want this color. I love these colors in my body. I want this type of material in my body. I want it to fit my body like this. And like the possibility that I'm going to find that in any store in the world are very slim. And so there's something about stepping back from what is presented to you as like the only options in life and saying, all right, hold on. Woo! I'm going to wake up from this slumber I'm in and be like, okay, but I really love this and I really love that. And I really want this in my life. So I can make those things happen. And maybe you don't want to sew your own clothing, but maybe you want to get your clothing that you purchase and take them to a tailor to get them fitted to you better, like as in a practical example, right? Or maybe you're okay that your clothing fit you pretty darn well, but you want to be really specific about what you bring into your life so that those things help to support you feeling more awake and more vibrant and more lit up and not bringing you down. Because I believe that, to stick with the clothing theme here just for a minute, I believe that what we put on our bodies has the ability to reflect and either support who we are on the inside or bring down who we are on the inside, right? So, like, I'm sure all of you can think of clothing that you have had on your body that either makes you feel like superwoman and empowered, and you're going to wear that to your next job interview. You're going to wear that on a date. And you probably also have clothing that make you feel frumpy and sad,
Yeah.
right? Like
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
it's too tight on the belly and you've got this muffin top and you just feel less than. Whereas in you just change out those pants in that same body, you would feel totally different. And it's like, it's not your body's fault. It's the clothing that's presented to us and it's the fashion that's presented to us. And so when we take our lives into our own hands and we're fully awake, and it doesn't have to be that you make clothes again, it can be whatever it is for you. And we choose what it is that we want in our lives. I think we have such a better chance at living a vibrant, awake life. And I kind of hate that the word awoke has sort of been commandeered as in this negative connotation. I don't know if you've heard that in the world, but I have a good friend who has a very different political view than me. And he and I talk a lot. And I'm always like, what? That's what the other side thinks, right? So like have this idea thing. So, and I'm like, you don't get to commandeer that word. That's not fair. But I think that awoke is a really important thing because when we stop just doing what we feel like we're supposed to do, when we stop just going through life, just following emotions, and we take a little pause and be like, all right, hold on. I want this intentionality. I want to slow it all down because I think the only way that we can do anything intentionally is if we take the time to slow that down and pause it. And that's in my making practice. That's in my day to day practice. I like to do a morning routine. I like a ritual of sorts where I do meditation and a little dance. And it just makes my life so much better when I do. That doesn't mean I always do. In fact, there's been several months now because I've just recently gone through a divorce and I've just recently gone through an autoimmune thing that is still like lingering in my body. And so it's not as easy for me to move as it was. But I'm like, this morning, I knew that you and I were going to talk. So I did a little morning routine. I did a meditation and I danced to 3 or 4 songs. It took me 25 minutes for all those things. And I did it because I knew I wanted to show up on this call as my most awake self, right? And I know inherently that those things are going to help me get there. I also didn't have a chocolate bar for breakfast because I know that I'm going to have better mental clarity and my brain is going to support me better when you and I are talking if I feed it well. So I had yogurt instead.
Thank you.
Let me be clear, not that I generally have a chocolate bar for breakfast, but it's been a rough week, so I have found myself medicating a little bit with food, which
No
is a whole
judgment.
different topic.
Chocolate's mine too. So no judgment. It does make everything better. It does.
It does, unfortunately. But so I set myself up for success to have this conversation with you today. And I think that the only way that we're going to know what sets us up for success is if we take the time to get to know ourselves really well. And we take the time to be like, all right, well, what does make me happy? What does make me feel lit up? And it isn't giant things. It's not like a trip to Disney World.
Right.
It's not a new Lamborghini. I don't even know like who wants a Lamborghini, but it's none of those things. Not really. It's really the day-to-day little things that like bring you joy and allow you to pause and take a moment.
I love all of that. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I can't even remember all the things you just said. There were so many good ones. I'm like, yes, that. I didn't want to interrupt because it was so beautiful. But
Thank you for sharing all that, and I was gonna ask you about your morning routine because 'cause I'm so interested in that, and I love hearing everyone's because everyone's
Yeah.
is different,
Mhm.
obviously, because it's what's gonna serve you best, um,
Right.
but at the heart of it, it's always what's gonna set us up for that day.
Mhm.
What's gonna put us on the best path to be our best selves each day, and what that is might look different each morning as well from,
Mhm.
mine. I know some mornings I'm more tired than others, and I just can't do everything exactly the way I would like to in my head, what my ideal routine would be, but
Yeah.
I love that you have music in there. Music can totally help in the morning. I feel like you need songs in the morning, and a lot of times I'll let the kids dictate when they get up, "All right, what do you feel like you need to hear right now?" And it does really, really help wake us up and just give us more energy and excitement, happiness for
Yeah.
the day because the mornings can just be really hard.
Like
So hard.
they can. My morning routine has really evolved over the years, but it's gotten to the point where I'm having a lot more grace with myself, which seems to
Yes.
be our theme here tonight,
Yes.
right? Like I just having more grace, like having the grace to do your notes wrong, having the grace to sew a wonky seam, having the grace to have a body that's lumpy over here and smooth over there, like just having grace with ourselves. Consistently, if I start out with something mindful, so that could be journaling, that could be meditating, that could be prayer, that could be setting up an altar and having a moment, like lighting a candle and having could be like that whole gamut, or could also just be a 5-minute meditation. I like to do that, and then the end of that, I like to do some kind of movement, and this is sort of new for me. I've spent a lot of time in my life honing in my spiritual path and my emotional path and sort of ignoring my physical body,
Mhm.
and I've been doing a lot of learning lately about healing the nervous system, and music is one of those things that helps to heal your nervous system and helps to move stuck energy out of your body. So, like, movement will also do that. So I love dance for well, I love dance anyway. Like, I'm the kind who just wiggles every time there's music going on, right?
Can't help it,
And
right?
in fact, I have a little story. So my son is 7 years old and he loves rock on music, which is not my favorite kind of music. Like, really, I'm like a folk music kind of person, right? Like, I like some blues, I like some folk music, some rooted kind of stuff. And he loves, like, the more drum beat there is, the better. And it's just, like, inherent in him because
Yep.
it's never really been part of his life. So, like, where has this come from? But I have this friend in my life whose children have a rock on band, according to my son, and they play heavy metal music, right?
Oh my gosh.
And I know, and he's heard them practice, and he's like, "I love them." And so they played at this place. It was not quite a bar, it was more like a restaurant. So I'm like, "All right, we're gonna go listen to them play because this is a pretty good environment. I feel fine about it. It's like a family kind of affair." So we go there, and I'm like, "Are you gonna dance with me? Because I love to dance, it doesn't matter what it is." And he's like, "Yeah." And then the music starts, and we're eating dinner still, and he's like, "Come on, let's go dance." And I'm like, "Well, I'd like to finish my meal first, and then we can go dance." And he keeps bugging me to go dance. And then and there's nobody out there dancing, not a single person, right? And he's just like bugging me, bugging me, bugging me. So I'm like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go dance. So we get out there and then he runs back to the table and he's like, I can't do it, mom. And I'm like, get over here. Like, you were bugging me all day. So I drag him back up there and he and I dance for like an hour to this music that, is not my music, but
Right.
totally his. And so he goes from being this stiff little robotic creature to at one point he's up on his toes doing these moves. And I'm like, what is that? And then later on, he says to me, "Mom, weren't you afraid to get out in front of all the" I was like, because he'd asked me how many people I thought were there, and I said, "I don't know, maybe 100." And he's like, "Aren't you afraid to get out in front of the 100 people and dance when nobody else was dancing?" And I'm like, "No." And I said, "I love dancing so much." I said, "Definitely in my life, I've been afraid, but we have to do the things that we're afraid of, even if we're afraid of them. You wanna dance, you gotta get out there and dance." And he's like, "I was afraid." And I said, "I know." I said, "That's okay though, you still did it." And he's like, "I did." And it was interesting to watch him process through that idea of how scary it was to get out there and dance in front of people. I have no idea how this is related to what we're talking about, but it was a story about
I
music, I
know
guess, that
because
I wanted to
it's this
share.
joy, and the music brought that out, I think, in both of you, which is
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah,
and so many lessons there,
yeah,
for him and
yeah.
what a good role model you are as a mom. And
Sometimes.
and and also, you wouldn't have chosen that music, but the things that we do for our kids, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, you know what? We're here. I'm going to make the most of it. I'm not going to sit here with my hands over my ears, like rolling my eyes. This is not music. This is noise. I'm going to
Yeah.
embrace it and we're going to have
Mm.
fun because we're together. And
Yeah.
what struck me is that your little boy still wants to dance with you, which is
I know.
amazing.
I know, 'cause I know he's 7, and I am so acutely aware of how many things have passed by as the last time. I think that he'll dance with me for a while yet, but there are other things that I'm like, "This is probably the last time or
Yeah.
soon to be the last
Yeah.
time this is gonna happen." And because I just have the one child, and so, yeah, there's such a sorrow to that, and another great reason to slow life down a little bit and to mark those times.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't physically slow them down, but we can emotionally slow them down to be like, "I wanna remember this experience
Yep.
and remember what has happened here."
And I think he's old enough. I think he's gonna remember that experience too. You made it so fun. He's gonna remember that forever. He's gonna remember that
Yeah,
when he's a dad and his
absolutely.
daughter's dragging him to some kind of music that he does not wanna listen to. So
Right. Yeah.
so that's a beautiful story. I'm so glad that you shared it. And I think it's when we really are present in those moments that we make them count. And we can, in some ways, although we can't truly slow time,
Right.
we can slow the moments down and remember them. I mean, if you were rushing through that or just had that mindset where you didn't really want to be there, you probably wouldn't have stayed for the hour and danced when nobody was dancing. You wouldn't have done those things. You'd be like, all right, we're finished eating. I took you to the show. Let's go.
Right.
And it would have had a very different ending and a very different memory would have been made.
Right.
So I feel like that honestly has been seeing time go so quickly through my children
Mm,
has been my inspiration to slow down. And it was my inspiration to start this podcast, to start a conversation about it because life is going so fast and
yeah.
we miss so much along the way if we're not present. And my youngest is 8, so similar to your son, and my oldest is just about 15. She's in high school now, and I honestly don't know how that happened, and I'm sure in a few more years, I'll be like, "Oh, I wish she was still in high school," but I just feel
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, something happened when, this summer, I'm like, oh, she's going into high school. This is crazy." We're getting to the end of our time with her in our house and just with her as our little girl under our roof and wanna make it
Mhm.
all count. I think that we owe it to ourselves and we also owe it to our children to make it count and to slow it down enough. And I've read so much about childhood development, and I'm a former teacher, so I am trained in a lot of those things as well. But just how kids, especially nowadays, there's so much coming at them from so many different directions. And life is moving so much faster. And I'm sure that parents always say this, like the older generation always says this. I feel like my grandparents are always saying it when we were kids. Oh, to be a kid these days. But I feel like to be a kid these days, it's really fast. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of like
Mhm.
overstimulation, overscheduled. Everything is so structured. There's not as much time to be a kid anymore.
Right.
I don't see the kids just playing around the neighborhood and everything is so like, oh, it's a scheduled sports practice or a scheduled piano lesson. Everything is so structured.
Right.
And it's in those unstructured moments, it's in those times when they're just running around the backyard together, collecting things, making up their own game. That's where their creativity is
Mhm.
nurtured and it grows. And that's to me, that's what being a kid is all about. And
Yes.
those experiences as a kid that make us who we are and give us the vibrancy as an adult. So we're not just like a robot at the end of the day. Go to
Right.
work, come home, meet everyone's needs, go back to bed and do it again.
What's on the
And
calendar?
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And life is so much more to that. And going back to what you said about tying this back into clothing, which I think is such a great metaphor for so much. I love it. I've never thought of it that way. But
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that. It's like trying to fit ourselves, like you said, into the dress that doesn't quite
Mhm.
fit really the right color for your complexion or whatever it might be. Stopping that mentality and instead making the dress, making the life
Mhm.
that is authentically yours and fits
Right.
you rather than the other way around. It's easy enough to do, even like you said with your morning routine. All those things you mentioned, it's 25 minutes, which in the morning is golden. I get that, but we can find it. We can find the 25 minutes.
We can.
It didn't cost a dime.
Right.
It it was fairly simple in the grand scheme of things, and it can make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Wearing the pair of pants or the dress that fit you can make such a difference as you go about your day. So these choices are so important, and they're all the small ones that lead to the big ones. And
Yeah.
there's just so many lessons in this. And I had taken some notes. I was starting to listen to your podcast, and I love it. I would encourage
Thank you.
everybody in kinship. It's a beautiful name too. I love that word kinship.
Thank you.
So you had talked about small choices equaling big change, and I think that's exactly what we're
Mhm.
saying here. And it couldn't be more true with our
Yeah.
kids, with us as adults, with the way we model for our youth, and just the way we go about our day, and the way we think about things. These little thoughts, like all these little thoughts, if they're negative, that's going to equal feeling pretty depressed. Or you
Right.
can reframe it and have a bunch of little thoughts that are building you up, empowering you. And that's going to lead to a very vibrant, full life where you're awake and not just on a hamster wheel. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. I wanted to mention real quick about your parenting thoughts because I could not agree with you more. I think that not only does unstructured time allow our kids to build their creativity and their sense of self, but I think it also allows them to feel capable, right? For them to work through something and
yes.
figure it out on their own. Because when you've got such structured lesson time, you have an authority there that's teaching you how to do something. You have an authority there that's going to help you out of a jam, that's going to help you figure this thing out. That, yeah, maybe they'll step back a little bit and let you struggle through it, but not very much because they have a class to keep moving forward.
So true.
And I think that we do our children a disservice. I could actually go on about this for a very long time,
Yeah,
but
I think this should be a whole nother episode, Tina. This will be continued on this
I
one.
think it should.
A huge subject, and I'm super passionate
Yes,
about it. Yeah.
me too. And I think that we do our children a disservice. I don't know how many children, and again, I'm not sure if this is because I'm of a certain age. And it's kind of like what our parents said and
Right,
our
right.
grandparents said. And I'm not entirely sure. I can admit that that might be true. But I see so many children or so many young adults that come out of our homes and out of our school systems and are not equipped to handle living life. They're not equipped to feel capable to live life. And it makes me really sad because they have that capability inside of them. And those parents have not failed, not by any means. They did those things because they love their children and they want their children to be well rounded and have big experiences and to have all of this joy. But ultimately, I think that the disservice is in that they don't learn to be capable. They don't learn to have that empowerment. They don't learn to figure out who they are exactly. And they don't learn. I'm not saying that doesn't ever happen because it does, right? But like, I think that, yeah, again, I could go on forever. So
It's so
I'll
true.
wrap it up by saying I agree with you 100%.
So my little one she's 8, almost 9, so a little older than your son. And no, I'm trying to think when we started letting her do this. And we live in a very quiet little suburban neighborhood with
Yeah.
sidewalks. If
Yeah.
she were to fall or need something or whatever, I mean, she doesn't have a cell phone or anything like that. So which none of us did either. We used to ride our bikes without a cell phone, and we came
We
home.
limped our bloody knees back home. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we finally, we let her start riding around the block by herself.
Yeah.
And I don't see many kids doing that at all.
No, I know.
And the joy on her face
Yeah. Like,
when she did it the first time. Yes.
yeah.
And you know what? It was such a gift for her. And she loves going out now and exploring. There's a lot of little like cul-de-sacs, and she likes to go down each one and just
Yeah.
go be a kid. Go
Yeah.
be a kid and feel a little bit of independence. And I have to say, just along the lines of those riding a bike, when I
Yeah.
think back to being a kid and the freedom, like I
Mhm.
remember, because we did do that a lot, we'd ride around the neighborhood. And that is one memory that I do have very clearly of like just riding down a hill and the wind and just feeling so empowered and free and like
Mhm.
independent. And that is so important. They need to have those feelings
They
to
do.
know that they're capable of that next thing. And
Right.
it's okay. They're 8 years old. They can ride around the block,
Right.
they can do it. One of my best friends is a teacher in New York City. And she told me that in 3rd grade, which my daughter is in 3rd grade, that
Mhm.
is the age that they are allowed to ride the subways home by themselves. And that like blew my mind. And Tina's jaw just dropped. And
Yeah.
mine did too the first time I heard that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay. Well, then I can certainly let my little
Yeah.
one ride around the block in our little suburbia
Right.
neighborhood, and, she'll find her way home." And
Yeah.
it's crazy, but it's so important. We have to give them those experiences.
It
They
is.
they deserve it.
They do deserve it. And I think, like, you know what? Before you said that story about your friend that's a teacher in New York City, I was thinking of a meme I had seen, which I think is true because I have several European friends who are parents. And we talk about this kind of thing quite a lot. But the idea of, a 5-year-old in America is not allowed to go to the bathroom by themselves, which isn't quite true. But, to some degree,
Right.
let's, yeah, you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Whereas in a 5-year-old in, say, Denmark is like, all right, you're going to take the green subway to this road, and then you're going to take a left, and you're going to walk 2 blocks, and you're going to get on this subway, right? Like that's the instruction that they're going to get. And I thought,
What a
we
difference.
yes, and we don't give them enough freedom. You're absolutely right. We don't give them enough freedom to feel capable because once they feel capable, the world is open to them. And
Yep.
that just ties into what I'm talking about when I teach women how to sew clothing, right? That sense of I am capable. Like we are all capable. And we just need that belief that we are. And I think little ones need us as parents to believe that they are capable.
100%.
Yes, we still have to keep them safe, but things are going to happen and they have to be able to work through that. Like I can distinctly remember riding my bike since we're talking about bikes and I love bike riding. When I was probably about 7 or 8 and I was riding it down the road and I fell down this giant hill and it was a dirt hill and I like skidded on my knees down this hill. And I was probably half a mile from home, but in our neighborhood, kind of. And this elderly woman who I just adore and was just getting her meal and she saw me like skidding down the road on my knees. And she brought me into her house and cleaned me up and gave me cookies. And I remember that as being because I was all sniffly and
Yes.
crying and like
Aw.
wanted my mom. I remember that being, even though I still had somebody else taking care of me, it wasn't my mom. Right. And it still felt like an independent moment of like, I got hurt and I was okay.
Yep.
And it was a neighbor that helped me out. I mean, somebody, we knew her, but somebody
Right.
down the road.
Right.
And I just thought that memory is a strong memory for me. And I don't have a ton of memories from childhood, but that one is a strong one. One, it was very painful. Like my flip flop got caught in my
Oh, yep.
and it went flying.
Oh,
But I had such a sense of independence and I had like maybe it was tea, but I had like tea and cookies with this woman. Like I was a little adult, right?
love it.
A little bleeding
It's like
adult.
you
And had
handled it. You handled it. You got
yeah,
this. It happened. And that's a really important lesson too. Sometimes things do happen, but
right.
you can deal with it. You're going to be okay. It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world.
Yep.
I feel like some kids right now would just completely panic and have a full out meltdown if that happened. They would not know what to do.
I agree.
And that's a problem too.
It
So,
is.
and what
It is.
a really beautiful memory. Although you did get hurt, you probably still have a scar from that one somewhere.
Probably I do.
But that's I love that. I love that. And you know what? It just reminds us that there are a lot of good people out there too. We hear so much negative in the news and
We
things like
do.
that. But I mean, if I saw a little kid, if that happened in front of my house, I'd be out there with the cookies and the Band-Aids and whatever else they needed. And
Right. And I'll
um,
bet you 99 out of 100 people on your street would as well. Like
yeah,
we do hear so much, but it's so sensationalized as well with the
yep,
media that we have. And again, there are a lot of topics we could dive into, but
yep,
there's so much sensationalism around the negative.
yep. At the heart of it,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good, right? A lot of
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Ah, Tina, it's been so much fun talking to you. And I think that we'll have to have like an empowered children's episode or something. Have empowered parents lead to empowered children because
Yes.
I could tell that's a topic we are both feel really strongly about. And I think that would be a
Yes.
lot of fun to talk about that more. So maybe we'll do a part 2 down the road, listeners. It'll be
All right.
fun. So thank you for being here today and this beautiful conversation. I will definitely leave everything in the show notes for people
Okay.
in case they don't remember. But why don't you just tell everybody how to listen to your podcast and where to find you?
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. And
Of
as you can
course.
see, it's always fun to have such passionate conversation. And I am grateful for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you.
It's really so important. You can find me online at kinshiphandwork.com, and that's KINSHIPHANDWORK. And on my website, you can get a link directly to the podcast. You can get a link to the different online courses that I have, and I have a blog, things like that. But my podcast is In Kinship. And so you can find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's been a lot of fun. And if you enjoy listening to Let's Slow Down, I think that you'll enjoy what I have to say as well, because really it's very similar. So I love, love, love that there are so many of us out there in the world who are coming at this from slightly different angles, but we're all really doing the same thing. We're looking for empowerment. We're looking for vibrancy. We're looking for all the ways that we as humans can improve our experience with living and have a much more joyful, vibrant life. And so I think that's awesome. Thanks for doing the work.
Of course. It's been a pleasure, Tina. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode and have been inspired to slow down and start living life at your own pace. As a brand new podcast, your listener voice matters. If Let's Slow Down is resonating with you, please take a minute to leave a review and rate us. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen and share it with friends. Remember, this is a process, so go easy on yourself. Be gentle and take all the space you need to thrive, because the world needs you to be at your best, to love and serve others and yourself.